Less than an hour, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will hold a Pentagon briefing to set the record straight about the successful U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader delivering a video message for the first time since the ceasefire with Israel took hold. Watch.
All right, Alexandria Hoff is live at the White House with the latest. Hey, Alex.
Hey, good to be with you. Yeah, this debate over damage is really about how long has Iran's nuclear program been set back by 30,000-pound bombs that were dropped on it. Now, you have CIA Director John Ratcliffe stating this, quote, CIA can confirm that a body of credible evidence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard adding, if the Iranians chose to rebuild, they would have to rebuild all three facilities entirely, which would likely take years to do. At the NATO summit, President Trump continued to push back on a preliminary assessment that claimed that Iran's nuclear program was set back by only a few months. A source familiar to the matter tells Fox that assessment was based off of 1 day's worth of reporting. The president added yesterday that additional evidence has been collected from Iran's underground facility Fordow by, quote, people going to the site.
There are numerous of those reports, and they're coming out fast and furious. But the most respected ones we've already seen. I guess you're going to be having over the next couple of days you're going to encapsulate it. But no, the site was obliterated, just like I said it was. And just like the pilots should be given credit for.
The White House now wants to limit classified information being shared with Congress. That's a sign of where it thinks the preliminary assessment leak came from. Here's the president's deputy attorney general on charging that leaker.
I mean, absolutely. Of course we're ready. You better believe, and the American people better know for sure that this is exactly the type of conduct that we will investigate fully. Whether it's treasonous and whether someone will be charged with treason, listen, we'll work that out. But you better believe that the Department of Justice is going to do everything we can to find out who did this.
An Iran supreme leader making an address this morning on state TV. He claimed on X simultaneously that the U.S. entered the war to save Israel, but, quote, achieved nothing. He also was boasting about the fact that their proximity, the country, is so close to U.S. military bases, saying that they are within striking distance if the U.S. choose to act out with aggression, as they put it again. I'll send it back to you.
Wow, so he's being a little confrontational coming out of his cocoon. Thanks,
Certainly
Alex.
So.
Yeah, he has to say that, though, right?
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know if this was, he was out for 4 days. We didn't hear anything of him. So now he's talking about, well, I know where the bases are. Well, you knew where the bases were before. And what'd you do? You telegraphed a hit on Qatar. That was when the time, if you were a tough guy, that's when you take your shot. But instead, they were afraid of another shot.
Well, it's kind of hard to take a guy serious who's been underground in a bunker.
Exactly.
Hiding from the world because Israeli forces as well as the United States know exactly where he is, and he's afraid of a strike. Mm-hmm. So to Ainsley's point, he has to show some face to his people to try to keep them in line, even though he really isn't. The bottom line is that they may have known where the U.S. forces were, but they gave us a heads up before they decided to strike us because they didn't want any casualties or any damage to our building.
Yeah, so there's going to be a press conference this morning, as we told you, with Pete Hegseth and General Raising Cane. And it's going to be at the Pentagon at 8 o'clock this morning. We will be taking it live. President Trump said, I thought this was interesting, he was talking about our pilots. He said, to fight for the dignity of our great American pilots. That's why we're having this briefing. These patriots were very upset. After 36 hours of dangerously flying through enemy territory, they landed. They knew the success was legendary. And then 2 days later, they started reading fake news by CNN and the failing New York Times. They felt terribly. He goes on to say that in this press conference or this briefing, you're going to be shown irrefutable evidence to show that this was a success.
So the president's going to be tightening the circle of people that are going to get briefed on intelligence, and that's going to tick off Congress. But you have to understand, we have other sensitive missions going forward, and we have to be able to trust that the right intelligence is going to come out. You know how much time they wasted pushing back on what they were saying with the results of this bombing raid? Also, the biggest bombs in the world, the most effective non-nuclear bombs in the world, were dropped exactly where they were supposed to. That's all you need to know. And believe me, the Iranians got the message. Here's our Secretary of Defense.
The instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times, is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons, to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. All of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated.
When you really put it into perspective, because at that time, none of the real intelligence reports had came out with the strong information when they were making this assessment. It was only that one report that was low confidence that was released. And they're making all of these conclusions about this when they hadn't even been to the site to be able to see. And I think what they did do, and I think the president highlighted this very well, they didn't honor our servicemen and women that did the mission. And the president talks about the conversation that he had with some of the pilots and how happy they were to fight for our country, and they demeaned them in the process. And I think a lot of them are regretting this morning.
We'll see. That was the initial report. We'll see what happens today. The Israelis have a different view of what happened, and they will more than likely on the ground.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.